Drew Prestridge. Thank you so much for joining me on Louisiana Lefty today.
Lynda, what's up?
Good to see you. We go way back.
We do. It seems like forever. I'm so excited to have watched you launch this podcast and do your thing with this, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
And you have been helpful all along, so I appreciate that. But before we get to the podcast, I wanted to do a video where we talked about some more current events kind of stuff.
All right.
And I specifically told you I wanted to ask you about the Supreme Court rulings that have come out. We've all focused a lot on Roe, but there have been a number of terrifying rulings come out, like the getting rid of the Miranda rights, them having to read you your Miranda rights, the getting rid of the need for warrants in searches within 100 miles of any U.S. border. They've just been stacking up these terrifying rulings that take away privacy and individual rights. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. You can talk about Roe if you want, but in addition to the ones that they've already deteriorated, they've signaled they're going to go after more rights. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, which I definitely have my eyes on. Yeah, where do we start, right? It's been a rough few weeks here. Yeah, I mean, in addition to Roe, obviously, the ones that have caught my eyes, the loosening of gun restrictions, obviously, in the wake of, I think we've had more mass shootings already this year in August than we've had in any other year. It's just insane that we're even thinking about loosening that in a time like this. The rollback of EPA restrictions in the wake of everything we're seeing with wildfires and, the heat and everything else going on with climate change. And then another one too, I do a lot of work in New Mexico in addition to here in Louisiana. And another one that they just ruled on was about indigenous sovereignty. Right. And, obviously those tribal lands being threatened, with their sovereignty being threatened by having more federal oversight over, their land, which goes against agreements they've had for years.
No historic problem with that idea.
Right. It's have we learned anything? Apparently not. And even if we did, it doesn't matter. We're just going to take things backwards, unfortunately. So I mean, it's been rough, with Roe specifically too, this isn't just a women's rights issue, right? It's an everyone issue. And as a man, I feel like it's everyone's responsibility to speak up about it and to speak out about it, not to mansplain, but, to say this is outrageous and I stand with you, and we need to be working to make sure that our rights stay protected. I mean, abortion is an incredibly serious and painful issue for a lot of people. And I mean, I know people that have gone through the procedure. I'm sure you do. I mean, many people that we know and that are listening right now probably know someone who's gone through it. And, I even think the whole pro-life versus pro-choice terminology is outdated. I mean, it's more about you're either pro these rights, pro reproductive health care, pro access and justice for this reproductive care, or you're against it. So, I mean, it's just a real shame as to what's going on right now. And what and the biggest thing I tell people that when they're like, what can we do? How do we respond to this? Is that, look, I know we say it all the time. I know people don't take it seriously, especially here in Louisiana sometimes, but elections do have consequences. It really does matter. I mean, look at this, from the 2016 election, to now, these are some of the consequences of, electing someone, I'm trying not to say his name, 45, right? And it really does matter. I mean, it's the decisions we make right now are critical and makes a difference who we choose to lead us. And for some people, that's a difference between life and death.
That's right.
So, and then for me specifically, as not just a man, but a gay man, I'm looking forward to some of these other decisions, right, that you alluded to. Like Clarence Thomas said, they might be looking at the decision that, that allowed for gay marriage, right? So I'm suddenly having very real, my husband and I have been married for about a year and a half now. We're suddenly having very real conversations about, all right, Vancouver, should we go check out Toronto? Should we, should we get that, should we look into that beach house in Mexico? I mean, like, it's really, I'm kind of making light of it, but it is kind of scary, like, obviously, you know, just like everybody else, we want to be able to like feel safe and comfortable where we are in our, in our home, near our family, and not have to uproot our lives or go elsewhere in order to feel that. So, it's going to be really interesting to see, what they do with some of these further cases that might come in front of the court.
Well, I like the point you made about the old labels of pro-life and pro-choice. And I know people have made a move to, anti-abortion and abortion rights support. And people have made a move to try to change that, but the old labels still stick. But the thing that occurred to me at some point is, and I mentioned Tim Kaine and Bob Casey frequently, they call themselves pro-life Democrats, but they support codifying Roe. So if you can be pro-life and still be pro-Roe, right? Because Ruth Bader Ginsburg always talked about Roe v. Wade actually being about privacy rights. And there are all these other Supreme Court decisions that use that as its precedent. So having toppled that, you are in fact calling up all those other decisions that used it as precedent. You're calling them into question.
Right. But I mean, they're calling them into question, but then they're also picking and choosing which parts of those cases,
right,
with the precedents from those cases, which parts are going to use to justify, whatever they need to justify the decision they want to make in the end. Right. So, I mean, you could go back and forth all day about like, well, this part, backs it up, but this other part goes against it. So it really just comes down to who we're trusting and electing to make the decisions to put these people onto the court, right?
And I think the left has to pay more attention, like the right has done for 4 decades. The left is going to have to pay much more attention to how we're voting to ultimately affect the Supreme Court. Like who we vote for in the Senate, who we vote for president impacts who ends up on the Supreme Court. And we're going to have to be better at that.
For sure. I mean, in a lot of ways, the Republicans are better at the long game than the Democrats are. And I mean, that not just with the Supreme Court, with gerrymandering and the makeup of our congressional districts, with the makeup of even local elected officials that are making decisions that are much, in some ways, much more impactful on you and your livelihood versus what the president of the United States is doing. Right. So, Democrats, for all the good we stand for, some of it is very, big picture. And yes, like in an ideal society, ideal world, like this would be great. But as far as like the realisticness of putting it into action, we need to be able to have the foresight to not just make that change, but make it last and think ahead.
Well, I think you're right. And I look forward to speaking to you more on the podcast. So sit tight. We'll get right to it.
Thanks so much.